You were taught that if you are kind enough, patient enough, giving enough, the world will eventually recognize it and give you what you deserve. It will not. And the people who told you that were not lying to you. They genuinely believed it. But belief does not change the mechanics of how social power actually moves, and the mechanics are ruthless, consistent, and completely indifferent to how good a person you are. Nice people do not lose because the world is cruel. They lose because niceness, as most people practice it, is not a virtue. It is a strategy, a survival strategy built in childhood, running on autopilot in adulthood, in being systematically exploited by every person in their life who understands, consciously or not, exactly how it works. Before you misunderstand what this video is, let me be precise. This is not an argument for becoming cold. It is not a case for cruelty or indifference or treating people as obstacles. Genuine kindness is one of the rarest and most powerful qualities a human being can possess. What this video is about is the counterfeit version, the niceness that is not kindness at all, but fear wearing kindness as a costume, the pleasantness that is not warmth, but the compulsive need to be liked, to avoid conflict, to keep everyone comfortable at the cost of your own position, your own needs, your own life. That version of nice is not a virtue, it is a wound, and you have been told your entire life to call it a strength. Here is where it starts. At some point early in your life, you learned that the world responded better to you when you were agreeable, when you smiled, when you accommodated, when you swallowed the thing you actually wanted to say and replaced it with something easier to receive. Maybe it was a parent who could not handle your anger. Maybe it was a school environment where conflict had consequences and compliance was rewarded. Maybe it was the simple accumulation of social feedback that told you, again and again, that the version of you that made people comfortable got more love than the version that told the truth. So you built a self around that feedback. You became the easy one, the reliable one, the one who never made things difficult, the one people could always count on to absorb whatever the situation required without complaint. And then you grew up and carried that architecture into every relationship, every workplace, every friendship, every negotiation you have ever been in. And you have been wondering ever since why people who are objectively less capable than you, less caring, less hardworking, less deserving, keep ending up with more. Here is the answer, and it is going to be uncomfortable. The world does not distribute its rewards based on merit or goodness or effort. It distributes them based on perceived value and demonstrated boundaries. And the nice person, the chronically accommodating person, systematically undermines both. Perceived value collapses when you are always available, when you never say no, when your yes is automatic rather than considered. Because value, at its most fundamental psychological level, is a function of scarcity. What is always accessible is never precious. What requires something to obtain carries weight. And the person who gives their time, their energy, their agreement, their presence unconditionally and without limit has accidentally communicated to everyone around them that these things cost nothing. Not because they said so, because they demonstrated it. Every time they said yes when they meant no, every time they helped when they were already depleted, every time they prioritized someone else's comfort over their own truth, the demonstration accumulated, and people built their behavior towards you on the foundation of what you demonstrated, not what you deserved. Then there is the boundary problem, and this one runs deeper. When a person never pushes back, never holds a line, never demonstrates that there is a point past which they will not go, one of two things happens in the people around them. In healthy people, it produces guilt, a vague discomfort at always getting their way, a quiet awareness that the dynamic is uneven. In less healthy people, it produces something else entirely. It produces contempt. Not the dramatic, visible kind. The quiet kind. The kind that looks like taking you for granted. The kind that looks like asking more and more and expressing less and less appreciation. The kind that looks like calling you only when they need something and disappearing when you do. The kind that looks like interrupting you in meetings because they have learned, through evidence, that you will not hold your ground when challenged. Contempt is what happens when the brain categorizes someone as safe to push. And the nice person, by never demonstrating consequence, by never showing that there is a cost to being treated carelessly, makes themselves the safest target in every room they enter. This is not a character judgment. It is a neurological one. The brain is constantly running status assessments. It is reading everyone in the environment and filing them into categories. Who requires care? Who can be pushed? Who has to be managed carefully? The nice person, through their behavior, keeps filing themselves into the wrong category. And the filing happens below the level of conscious decision. People do not choose to take advantage of you. They simply respond to what you have made available. There is a specific pattern that plays out in workplaces so consistently it is almost formulaic. The nice person works harder than everyone else. They take on what others decline. They absorb the friction, smooth the tensions, make the environment function in ways that often go entirely unrecognized. They are competent. They are reliable. They are in almost every measurable sense more valuable than the person who gets promoted over them. And then they watch the promotion go to someone who is louder, more self-promotional, more comfortable claiming credit, and less comfortable doing the invisible work that actually holds things together. And the nice person sits with that and tells themselves some version of, my work will eventually be recognized. If I just keep going, they will see it. They will not see it, not because they are blind, but because you have trained them not to look. You have made yourself so available, so accommodating, so frictionless to be around, that your presence is taken as background. The walls do not get thanked for holding the building up. They are simply expected to. The person who negotiates for themselves, who states their value plainly, who is comfortable with a moment of tension in service of a fair outcome, who occasionally lets someone else feel the consequence of not having them, that person gets the room. Not because they deserve it more, because they made their value visible in a language the environment actually responds to. Now here is the part that the nice person finds most difficult to accept. The people who are closest to you, the ones you have given the most to, the ones who have benefited most from your accommodation, are often the ones least equipped to recognize what they have, not because they are monsters, because you never showed them the alternative. Think about the relationships in your life where you give the most, where you bend the most, where you consistently prioritize the other person's comfort over your own. Now ask yourself honestly, does that person treat your needs with the same weight you treat theirs? Do they show up for you the way you show up for them? Do they even know what you actually need? Or have you been so busy managing their experience of you that you have never let them encounter the version of you that requires something? Most people who identify as nice have never let the people around them see what it costs. They absorb the cost privately and present the result publicly. And so the people around them never develop the capacity to bear any of the weight because you never made them. And because you never made them, they cannot. And now you are exhausted and resentful and convinced the world is filled with people who take. It is not. It is filled with people who took what was offered without limit and developed no muscle for reciprocity because the situation never required it. This is the shift that changes everything. The move is not to become mean. The move is to become honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what you will and will not accept. Honest about when you are helping from genuine desire and when you are helping from fear of what happens if you do not. That distinction, that single internal distinction, is the difference between kindness and compulsion, and it changes everything about how the behavior lands.
When you help from genuine desire, the other person feels it. There is no resentment underneath it, no silent accounting, no part of you waiting to be recognized for the sacrifice. It arrives clean. It lands is what it is, and it produces genuine gratitude because it was genuinely given. When you help from compulsion, from the anxiety of saying no, from the need to be liked, from the fear of conflict, people feel that too. They may not name it, but they feel the transactional energy beneath the generous act, the part of you that is keeping score even though you told yourself you were not. And that feeling, that faint sense that the kindness comes with strings, even when no strings were explicitly attached, is part of what produces the contempt over time. They feel obligated by your generosity rather than grateful for it. An obligation breeds resentment in the person who feels it, not appreciation. The other shift is learning to let people feel the consequence of your absence. This is the one that terrifies the nice person most, because the entire architecture of niceness is built on making sure nobody is ever disappointed by you. Nobody is ever inconvenienced. Nobody ever has the experience of needing you and finding you unavailable. And so you have never let anyone develop the full awareness of what your presence actually provides. Stop doing that. Let someone miss a deadline because you were not there to cover for them. Let a plan fall apart because you were not available to hold it together. Let a person sit with the discomfort of having asked too much of you and received, for once, a clear and unashamed no. Not as punishment, as information. You are giving them accurate data about reality, the reality in which you are a person with limits and not a resource without them. And accurate data is what allows relationships to become honest. The people worth keeping will adjust. They will recalibrate. They will bring a more reciprocal version of themselves because the situation now requires it. The people who cannot tolerate a single no, who escalate or withdraw or punish you for having a limit, those people are showing you something important about what the relationship was actually built on. Let them show you. It is the most useful information they will ever give you. Here is what no one tells you about the person on the other side of this change. When you stop being endlessly available, when you hold a line for the first time, when you say no and do not follow it with an explanation, some people in your life will react with confusion, some with frustration, some with a very specific kind of anger that feels disproportionate to what you actually did. That disproportionate anger is the sound of a dynamic being disrupted, of an expectation being violated, of someone discovering that the arrangement they built their behavior on has changed without their consent. That reaction is not evidence that you did something wrong. It is evidence that you did something different, and different is always uncomfortable for the person who benefited from the old way. The discomfort is not your responsibility to resolve. You are not required to manage how other people feel about your decision to stop managing yourself out of existence. The niceness that was trained into you was not wrong. It was a response to an environment that required it. It kept you safe when safe was the only thing available. But you are not in that environment anymore. You are not the child who needed to be agreeable to survive the room. You are an adult with real value, real limits, real needs. And the version of you that keeps pretending otherwise is not protecting anyone. It is shrinking you down to a size that fits inside other people's comfort zones. And you have been doing it for so long that some part of you has started to believe that's your actual size. It is not. Stop being so easy to have around that people forget what having you around actually means. Not by becoming difficult, by becoming real. By letting the full weight of who you are take up the space it actually occupies. By saying the true thing instead of the comfortable one. By allowing yourself to be someone that requires a small amount of effort to keep, because things that require no effort to keep are the first things people stop valuing. You do not need to harden. You need to stop softening yourself for rooms that never asked you to. If this video reached the part of you that has been quietly exhausted by your own generosity, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You were just never given the language for what was happening to you. Now you have it. What you do with it is yours.